Fleetmaster Corvin studied the sensor displays with satisfaction. His armada of 200 Velkari warships hung in space at the edge of human territory. The humans had ignored the ultimatum, had sent back some ridiculous message about consequences. Now they would learn respect. The Velkari Empire had conquered 47 species. Some had surrendered quickly. Others had fought. None had won. The pattern was always the same. The Velkari appeared, demonstrated their power, and the primitives submitted. Humanity would be no different. Corvin's sensors detected the human fleet approaching. 50 vessels, smaller than Velkari ships using fusion drives that the Empire had abandoned centuries ago. Their hulls were thick metal, primitive and crude. They moved in simple formations. Nothing creative, nothing impressive. This would be over quickly. The human fleet stopped at maximum weapons range. A transmission came through. Admiral June's face appeared on the display, his expression neutral. He spoke calmly like someone discussing the weather. The words were simple. This was humanity's final warning. "Leave now or be destroyed," Corvin laughed. His officers laughed. The entire bridge crew found it hilarious. These primitives, with their ancient ships and basic weapons threatening the might of the Velkari Empire. It was absurd. Corvin gave the order to attack. Velkari plasma lances fired. Brilliant streams of superheated matter that could melt through any armor. Particle beams lashed out, weapons that broke matter apart at the atomic level. 200 ships firing together, enough power to sterilize a planet. The human shields flared, energy barriers trying to deflect the onslaught. They held for a moment, flickering and bright. Then they failed, just as Corvin expected. The weapons struck hull metal, burning through, penetrating deep into the human ships. Corvin prepared the victory speech he would send to the High Command. Another easy conquest. Another primitive species broken by Velkari might. Then everything changed. The human ships, damaged but functional, opened fire. Not with the kinetic weapons Corvin expected. Not with the simple lasers or missiles his intelligence had predicted. They fired weapons that made his sensor officers scream in alarm. The lead human ship, a dreadnought called Retribution, launched missiles that blazed with impossible energy signatures. Antimatter warheads, each one containing enough destructive power to vaporize a small moon. They struck 3 Velkari cruisers. The ships did not explode. They did not break apart. They simply ceased to exist, matter converting to pure energy in flashes brighter than stars. Lieutenant Hyun sat at the weapons console of the Retribution, her face calm as she worked. She had trained for this her entire career, hoping she would never need to use these skills. Now she unleashed humanity's fury with cold precision, target locks, fire solutions, launch commands, each action smooth and practiced. 6 more Velkari ships died in the first salvo. Corvin shouted orders demanding his fleet return fire, but his officers were panicking. The sensors were showing readings that made no sense. The human ships were deploying weapons that registered as Tier 2 technology, maybe Tier 1. These were the weapons of the most advanced species in the galaxy, the weapons the Velkari themselves could barely produce. How did humans have them? A second human ship, the Vengeance, fired something different. Quantum disruptors, devices that manipulated the fundamental fabric of reality. The weapons phased Velkari vessels partially out of normal space. The ships tore themselves apart as different sections existed in different dimensions. Hulls shattered. Crews died instantly. 12 more Velkari warships became expanding clouds of debris. Engineer Nari monitored the antimatter containment systems on the Retribution. Each missile, each warhead contained antimatter held in magnetic bottles. If containment failed, the ship would explode with enough force to destroy the entire fleet. One mistake, one moment of lost focus, and everyone died. Her hands never shook. Her eyes never left the displays. She managed the power flow with perfect precision, feeding the weapon system while keeping the deadly fuel stable. She had done this 1,000 times in simulations. Now she did it for real. More Velkari ships died. Corvin's fleet tried to adapt. They concentrated fire on single human vessels, trying to overwhelm their defenses. They used their faster-than-light drives to reposition, attacking from different angles. They deployed electronic warfare, jamming communications and sensors. Nothing worked. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. Their communications could not be jammed. Their sensors could not be fooled. When Velkari ships tried to flank them, The humans were already turning to meet the threat. When the enemy concentrated fire, the humans dispersed. When the Velkari dispersed, the humans concentrated. It was like fighting an opponent who knew every move before it happened. Because humanity did know, they had fought themselves for thousands of years. Every tactic the Velkari used, humans had invented it, perfected it, and learned to counter it. Wars between human nations had killed billions and taught terrible lessons. Now those lessons were being used on a new enemy. Admiral June sat in his command chair, watching the battle unfold on the tactical display. He felt no joy, no excitement, only grim necessity. These aliens had killed his people, had enslaved survivors, had threatened his home. This was justice delivered in fire and fury. A third human ship deployed nanite swarms. Tiny machines, billions of them, each one smaller than a blood cell. They spread through space in invisible clouds seeking enemy vessels. When they found one, they began consuming it. Metal, plastic, organic matter, everything was broken down and converted into more nanites. Velkari warriors watched in horror as their ships began to dissolve from the inside out. Hulls turned gray and crumbled. Systems failed. The nanites spread from ship to ship unstoppable, consuming everything they touched. 20 Velkari vessels became clouds of gray dust in minutes. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, the entire Velkari fleet was destroyed. Not a single ship escaped. 200 warships, thousands of warriors, all gone. The human fleet had taken damage, but every human ship survived. Admiral June opened a channel to Velkari space. His message was broadcast across their communication networks, sent to every world they controlled. The words were simple and cold. Humanity had given a warning. The Velkari had ignored it. This was the result. Now there would be no more warnings. Return the human prisoners, all of them, or the human fleet would come into Velkari space. They would burn every military installation, every warship, every weapon they found. And if the Velkari still refused, humanity would come for the homeworld itself. 30 days. The same time limit the Velkari had given humanity. But humanity meant it. The transmission ended. The human fleet waited, weapons ready, systems hot. They were prepared to continue if necessary. On the Velkari homeworld, the High Command watched recordings of the battle. They watched their fleet die. They watched weapons that should not exist tear through their ships like paper. They watched humans fight with the efficiency and ruthlessness that chilled their blood. One of the council members, a veteran of 20 campaigns, whispered what they were all thinking. The humans had been classified as Tier 7, primitive spacefarers barely worth noticing. That classification was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Humanity was not primitive. They were old, ancient by galactic standards. They had been fighting wars since before the Velkari existed. They had built weapons so terrible that they frightened themselves into peace. And now the Velkari had given them a reason to unseal those weapons, the council argued. Some wanted to surrender, to return the prisoners and hope for mercy. Others demanded they fight, mobilize the full might of the Empire, crush humanity with overwhelming numbers. Pride won. Fear of showing weakness won. If the Velkari surrendered to a species they had called primitive, their entire empire might collapse. Dozens of subjugated species would rebel. The empire would fall, they would fight. They would gather every ship, every weapon, every warrior. 5,000 vessels, the largest armada ever assembled. They would burn every human world and make an example of this upstart species. The order went out. The Velkari prepared for war. In the slave colonies, Sora heard whispers from other prisoners. The guards were nervous, talking about a battle, about human ships, about weapons no one expected. She felt hope for the first time since her capture. Her people were coming. And the Velkari were starting to realize the terrible mistake they had made. The Velkari Grand Armada entered human space like a storm. 5,000 warships, the accumulated military might of an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds. Fleetmaster Vornax commanded them, determined to succeed where Corvin had failed. The humans had surprised them once. It would not happen again. The armada split into multiple attack groups, each targeting a different human colony. The strategy was simple. Attack everywhere at once, force humanity to divide their forces, overwhelm them with numbers. Then strike at Earth while their fleet was scattered. The first attack group, 800 ships strong, reached the colony world of New Busan. 2 million humans lived there. Farmers and miners and families. The Velkari sent landing forces to the surface. 50,000 warriors equipped with plasma weapons and combat armor. They would slaughter the colonists, broadcast the massacre across human space, break humanity's will to fight. The warriors landed in drop pods, ready for an easy victory against frightened civilians. Instead, they found General Yuna's 3rd Defense Army waiting for them. The general stood in the command center deep underground, watching tactical displays as her forces engaged the enemy. She had been given 3 weeks to prepare New Busan's defenses. It was enough. The Valkyrie warriors emerged from their pods into a killing ground. Colonel Day's mechanized infantry division waited in defensive positions, soldiers in powered armor that made each human a walking tank. The armor was 10 feet tall, reinforced with composite materials that could stop plasma fire, equipped with built-in weapon systems and sensor arrays. The Valkyrie opened fire. Plasma bolts splashed harmlessly off human armor. Then the humans returned fire. Railguns, magnetic accelerators that launched projectiles at hypersonic speeds. Each shot hit with the force of an artillery shell. Valkyrie warriors, tough and experienced, were torn apart. The aliens tried to advance using cover and tactical movement. They ran into automated defense systems. Gun turrets emerged from hidden positions, tracking targets with computer precision. Mines detonated, smart weapons that waited for the perfect moment. Combat drones filled the air, small flying machines that attacked from above. Colonel Day watched his helmet display, seeing enemy positions marked in red. He commanded his battalion with calm efficiency, moving units to flank the enemy, calling in artillery strikes, directing drone swarms. This was what humans did best. Organized violence, precise and overwhelming. The Valkyrie tried everything. They called in air support, but human anti-aircraft systems shot down their flyers. They used heavy weapons, but human armor was too strong. They attempted to overwhelm defensive positions through sheer numbers. But humans had learned centuries ago how to turn numbers into a disadvantage through superior positioning and firepower. In 6 hours, the entire Valkyrie landing force was dead. 50,000 warriors reduced to bodies scattered across the battlefield. Human casualties, 23 injured, 0 dead. In space above New Busan, Admiral Jun's fleet engaged the Valkyrie attack group. The dreadnought Vengeance led the assault, its captain Soo-hyun, directing fleet movements with practiced skill. Her advantage was communication. Human ships used quantum entanglement systems, instantaneous communication that could not be intercepted or jammed. Every human ship knew what every other ship was doing in real time. Perfect coordination. The Valkyrie fought as individual vessels, their commanders making separate decisions, their communications delayed and sometimes blocked. Against any other enemy it might have worked. Against humanity, it was suicide. The human fleet moved as one organism, ships supporting each other, covering weaknesses, exploiting enemy mistakes. When Valkyrie vessels tried to concentrate fire, the humans were already moving. When the enemy spread out, the humans fell on isolated ships in overwhelming force. Commander Junho on the dreadnought Indomitable deployed adaptive weapon systems. The Valkyrie had studied the first battle, had developed countermeasures against human weapons. Their new shields could resist antimatter explosions better. Their armor had been reinforced against nanites, so humanity adapted faster. Junho's weapon systems used AI, artificial intelligence that learned and evolved in real time. The computers analyzed enemy defenses, identified weaknesses, created new weapons mid-battle. When shields resisted antimatter, the AI designed shaped charges that focused the blast. When armor stopped nanites, the AI created new nanite strains that worked differently. The Valkyrie could not keep up. Every time they adapted, humanity was already one step ahead. Ships died by the dozen, by the hundred. The battle above New Busan lasted 3 hours. All 800 Valkyrie ships were destroyed. The human fleet lost 6 vessels. Similar battles raged across human space. Every colony the Valkyrie attacked, they found prepared defenses and furious resistance. Every time they engaged the human fleet in space, they lost. Dr. Bora worked on the Perseus orbital weapons platform, leading a research team tasked with developing new weapons. During the battle over the colony Sejong, she witnessed Valkyrie ships using their faster-than-light drives to escape. They would jump away, regroup, attack from a different angle. Bora spent 4 hours working on a solution. Her team developed a reality-anchoring field, a device that stabilized space itself within its area of effect. Ships caught in the field could not engage FTL drives. They were trapped in normal space, unable to retreat. When the field activated during the next Valkyrie attack, The enemy found themselves with nowhere to run. The human fleet surrounded them, destroyed them systematically. No Velkari ship escaped. The battles continued for 2 weeks. The Velkari Grand Armada, once 5,000 ships strong, was reduced to scattered remnants fleeing in terror. Human colonies stood intact. Human fleets controlled the battlefield. The empire that had conquered 47 species was being broken by one. On the Velkari homeworld, panic spread. The High Command had promised easy victory. Instead, they delivered disaster. Worse, the subjugated species under Velkari rule were beginning to rebel. They had seen the humans fight. They had seen the empire bleed. If humanity could resist, maybe they could too. Rebellions erupted on a dozen worlds. Slave populations rose up against their masters. Whole sectors of the empire began to fracture. The Velkari had built their power on fear and strength. Now they looked weak, and their empire was collapsing from within. While the main battles raged, Special Operations Commander Inha led a different mission. She commanded a strike team of 50 soldiers, the best humanity had. Their objective was simple: rescue the prisoners. Inha's team used stealth ships, vessels coated in materials that made them nearly invisible to sensors. They infiltrated deep into Velkari territory, avoiding patrols, moving in silence. Intelligence from Director Taeyang told them where the slave colonies were located. The first colony held 300 human prisoners, including Sora. The rescue operation took 20 minutes. Inha's team hit the facility at night, cutting through security with plasma torches and shaped charges. They moved through the compound systematically, killing guards, freeing prisoners. Sora saw human soldiers for the first time in months. They wore black armor, carried weapons that looked like they belonged in nightmares, and moved with lethal efficiency. One of them cut her chains and told her to stay close. They would get her out, but it was not just humans in the slave pens. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species, all captured and enslaved by the Velkari. They begged to be freed. They asked to join humanity's fight. They wanted revenge on their captors. Inha made a decision. Her orders were to rescue humans, but these aliens had suffered the same as her people. She freed them all. The prisoners took weapons from dead guards, followed the humans to the stealth ships. Not everyone could fit. Those who could not were given weapons and supplies. They would start their rebellion. Inha's team hit 6 more slave colonies in 4 days. Each time they freed humans and aliens both. Each time they left behind armed rebels ready to fight. The Velkari Empire was not just losing to humanity, it was tearing itself apart. The rescued humans brought intelligence. Sora, finally free, met with Director Taeyang. She gave him information about Velkari infrastructure, military deployments, supply lines. Minsu, a scientist who had been captured, provided technical data about Velkari technology. Yunji, an engineer, explained weaknesses in their ship designs. Taeyang took all this information and planned the final operation. The Velkari High Command had retreated to their homeworld, hiding behind massive planetary shields and orbital defense stations. They refused to surrender, convinced they could still win if they held out long enough. They did not understand. Humanity was not interested in a long war. Humanity wanted justice, and they wanted it now. Admiral June gathered the entire Terran defense fleet, every warship, every weapon, every soldier. They would strike at the Velkari homeworld itself. They would end this war. President Kyung gave the final authorization. The fleet would carry one more weapon, the most terrible thing humanity had ever built. The Stellar Lance, a device that could channel the power of a star into a focused beam capable of destroying planets. They would not destroy the Velkari homeworld, but they would show that they could. And then the Velkari would surrender or they would die. The human fleet jumped into Velkari Prime System. The final battle was about to begin. The message reached Earth 3 weeks after the attack. Sora's transmission, weak and broken by distance, played across every screen in the Terran Coalition headquarters. President Kyung watched it 7 times before calling the emergency council meeting. Each time, the fury in his chest grew colder and harder. The council chamber filled quickly. Admiral June arrived first, his uniform perfect despite the late hour. He had commanded the Terran Defense Fleet for 12 years, keeping humanity safe from pirates and accidents. He had never fought a war. No living human had. The last real war ended 200 years ago when humanity finally unified after nearly destroying itself. General Yuna came next, her face grim. She commanded ground forces that mostly helped with disasters and rescue operations. Her soldiers trained constantly, but for what? Peace had lasted so long that war seemed like ancient history, something from textbooks and old videos. Director Taiyang entered last. He ran intelligence, which meant he knew secrets that kept him awake at night. He carried a data pad, and the look on his face made Kyung's stomach tighten. Whatever Taiyang had discovered, it was bad. The council sat. The room went silent. Kyung played the message one more time. They watched Sora's face, heard her voice, saw the fear and determination in her eyes. They saw the flash of weapons fire in the background, heard the screams. When it ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Then the rage began. Not hot rage, not screaming or violence. Cold rage. The kind that makes people dangerous. The kind that humans had learned to fear in themselves, because once it started, it did not stop until everything was ashes. Admiral June spoke first. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the table edge so hard his knuckles turned white. The aliens had destroyed 24 ships. They had killed over 400 explorers, scientists, and crew. They had enslaved the survivors. And now they sent a message to Earth demanding complete surrender. 30 days or they would come and kill everyone. General Yuna pulled up footage her analysts had gathered. The alien ships were powerful, more advanced than human vessels in some ways, but not in all ways. The analysts had studied the weapons, the tactics, the technology. The aliens were strong, yes, but they fought like they had never faced a real enemy. They were arrogant, sloppy, overconfident. Then Director Taiyang spoke, and the room got even colder. He explained what most people did not know, what history books mentioned only in footnotes. Before unification, humanity had developed weapons that terrified them. Not just nuclear bombs, though those were bad enough. Worse things. Antimatter warheads that could erase cities. Biological plagues that could kill entire continents. Nanotechnology that could consume all matter it touched. AI systems designed for one purpose: to kill as efficiently as possible. Humanity had built these weapons during their darkest times, when nations fought each other with everything they had. They had nearly destroyed themselves. When peace finally came, they locked the weapons away. Treaties banned them. Laws made even talking about them a crime. Humanity swore never to use such things again, but they kept them, just in case. Deep in vaults on the moon, in bunkers on Mars, in secret facilities scattered across the solar system. The weapons waited, sealed behind security systems that required authorization from the president, the admiral, and the general all at once. Kyung looked at the datapad Taiyang had brought. Inventory lists, yields, capabilities, enough weapons to kill every living thing in the solar system 10 times over. Maybe more. They had built all this to use on themselves. Now they had a different enemy. June suggested sending a message back to the aliens. Offer to negotiate. Try to buy time while humanity prepared defenses. Maybe the aliens would listen to reason. Kyung shook his head. He had watched Sora's message 7 times. He had seen the bodies floating in space, the ships exploding, the casual cruelty in how the aliens treated survivors. These beings did not negotiate. They conquered. They saw humanity as weak, as property, as nothing. They needed to learn the truth. Yuna asked the question everyone was thinking. If humanity unsealed the weapons, used the terrible things they had locked away, what would they become? They had chosen peace. They had built a civilization on the idea that violence was the last resort, never the first option. If they went to war with everything they had, would they lose themselves? Kyung stood. He looked at each council member. He thought about the 400 dead explorers. He thought about Sora and the others in alien chains. He thought about Earth, his home, threatened with destruction by creatures who thought humans were beneath them. His decision was simple. Humanity did not start this fight, but they would finish it. He gave the orders. June would mobilize the defense fleet and begin refitting ships with weapons from the vaults. Yuna would activate reserve forces and prepare ground troops for combat. Taiyang would gather all intelligence on the aliens, find their weaknesses, learn how to hurt them. The authorization codes were entered. 3 different people, 3 different keys, 3 different locations. The vaults opened for the first time in 2 centuries. Kyung drafted a message to the aliens. Short and clear. Return the human prisoners. Leave human space. Or face the consequences. He did not threaten. He did not bluster. He simply stated facts. The message included a video, footage from the old wars when humans fought humans, cities burning, oceans boiling, entire regions rendered lifeless, and text explaining that humanity had stopped fighting only because they became too good at it, too efficient at killing. They had aimed all that power at themselves and realized they had to stop or die. The aliens thought humanity was weak. The message showed them the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was terrifying. They had just been very, very careful not to terrify anyone. The message sent. Kyung addressed the Terran coalition. Every human world connected to the transmission. He spoke carefully, knowing his words would echo through history. He explained what happened. He showed them the truth. He told them that the aliens demanded surrender. Then he told them humanity's response: no surrender, no submission. If the aliens wanted war, they would get war. Not the war they expected, not the easy conquest they imagined, but something they could not comprehend. Humanity would show them what it meant to threaten Earth, to kill human explorers, to enslave human beings. The speech ended with a promise. Humanity would bring their people home, no matter the cost, no matter what it took. Across human space, the response was immediate. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Shipyards that had been building exploration vessels retooled for war production. Scientists who had spent careers on peaceful research turned their minds to weapons development. Humanity, united in peace for 200 years, united for war in a single day. Byung, director of the largest shipyard in the system, stood in front of a massive hangar door. Behind it waited ships that had not moved in 2 centuries. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, all the war machines humanity had built before learning to stop. They had been maintained, kept ready just in case. That case had arrived. The hangar doors opened. The lights came on. The old warships woke up, and Byung smiled, cold and grim, because he knew what was coming. The aliens had chosen their enemy poorly. They had made humanity remember what it was before peace. They had made humanity remember why it had needed peace in the first place. The stars looked peaceful through the observation window of the horizon's edge. Captain Jiho stood on the bridge, watching the distant lights of an unknown solar system. His crew had traveled farther than any human before them. They were explorers, scientists, people who wanted to learn about the universe. They carried no weapons except small arms for protection against wildlife. Their mission was simple: find new worlds, study them, and return home with knowledge. Minji worked at the navigation console, her fingers moving across the holographic display. She had plotted their course through this sector carefully, avoiding any signs of danger. Next to her, Daehyun monitored the ship's systems. Everything worked perfectly. The fusion drives hummed quietly, pushing them through space at speeds their grandparents would have called impossible. Hana stood in the science lab below the bridge, studying readings from a nearby planet. The data showed signs of ancient ruins, possibly from a civilization millions of years old. She was excited. This discovery could change everything humans knew about the galaxy. She wanted to land, to explore, to understand who had built those structures and where they had gone. Jiho was about to give the order to move closer when the sensors screamed a warning. Minji's hands flew across her console, her face going pale. Ships were approaching. Big ships. Dozens of them appearing from nowhere, as if space itself had torn open to release them. The vessels were massive dark metal things covered in strange markings. They looked like they were built for war. Weapon ports lined their hulls. Energy signatures blazed across the sensor screens, showing power levels far beyond anything human technology could produce. Jiho immediately opened communication channels. He broadcast on every frequency, using every first contact protocol humanity had developed. His message was simple and peaceful. They came in friendship. They meant no harm. They wished to talk and learn. There was no response. The alien ships moved into attack formation. Jiho felt his stomach turn cold. He ordered his crew to power up their shields and prepare to retreat. The horizon's edge was not a warship. They had basic defensive shields meant to protect against space debris, not military weapons. Their engines were fast, but could these ships follow? He never got the chance to find out. The lead alien vessel fired without warning. A beam of pure energy, bright as a sun, cut through space and struck the horizon's edge directly. The shields lasted less than a second. The beam punched through the hull, through multiple decks, through the reactor core. Jiho had time to see the flash of light. to feel the heat, to know that he had failed to protect his crew. Then there was nothing. The horizon's edge exploded into fragments. 23 other human ships, all part of the exploration fleet, suffered the same fate. The aliens hunted them down methodically, destroying them one by one. The humans tried to run, tried to fight with their pathetic kinetic weapons, tried to surrender. Nothing worked. The aliens killed them all, almost all. Sora found herself thrown into an escape pod as her ship, the research vessel Curious Mind, broke apart around her. The automatic systems activated, sealing the pod and launching it away from the dying ship. She tumbled through space, watching through the small window as the aliens destroyed everything. Her friends, her colleagues, everyone she had traveled with for 3 years, all gone in minutes. She activated the pod's emergency beacon and started recording. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. She was a communications officer. This was her job. Someone had to warn Earth. Someone had to tell humanity what happened here. The recording was simple. The aliens attacked without warning or reason. They were overwhelmingly powerful. Earth should send no more ships. Earth should run, hide, do whatever it took to survive, because these aliens were coming. She transmitted the message, burning through the pod's entire power supply, to punch the signal across the vast distance to human space. Then the aliens found her. The pod's hull rang like a bell as a tractor beam caught it. Sora watched helplessly as the alien ship pulled her inside. The pod door was torn open by massive reptilian creatures in dark armor. They grabbed her roughly, dragging her out. She saw dozens of other humans, survivors from other ships, huddled in a cargo bay. They all looked terrified. The aliens chained them together. One of the creatures, larger than the others and wearing more decorations, stepped forward. It spoke, and somehow Sora understood. A translator device, she realized. The aliens' words came through clearly, each one like a hammer blow. Humanity was now property of the Velkhari Empire. They would work in the mines, build in the factories, serve in whatever way their masters demanded. Resistance meant death. Obedience might mean survival. Earth would receive a message: surrender completely or every human world would burn. The alien commander Threxus laughed as he explained this. He said humanity was weak, primitive, barely worth the effort to conquer. Their technology was ancient, their weapons useless. The Velkhari had defeated hundreds of species. Humans would be no different. Sora felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, though she was afraid. Not despair, though the situation seemed hopeless. It was something else. Something she had read about in history books. The old stories talked about it. The moments when humans realized they faced an enemy that wanted to destroy them completely. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people living in peace. She thought about the wars humanity had fought long ago, before the unification, when humans killed each other by the millions. She thought about the weapons they had built, so terrible that they locked them away and swore never to use them again. She thought about all this as the aliens threw her into a cell with the other survivors. In the darkness, surrounded by crying and praying, Sora whispered words that no one else could hear. Words she hoped were true, words that gave her strength to endure. The aliens thought humanity was weak. They had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked the wrong species, and when Earth learned what happened here, when humanity saw their people enslaved and murdered, the Velkhari would learn what humans became when they stopped being peaceful. They would learn that humanity had not forgotten how to make war. They had simply chosen not to. That choice was about to end. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velkhari Prime system. 300 warships, the entire might of humanity's military, faced the homeworld of an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. Admiral June stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display with cold eyes. The Velkhari homeworld hung in space, surrounded by defenses that had taken centuries to build. Thousands of orbital weapons platforms, defense stations armed with plasma cannons and particle beams, a planetary shield that could withstand the blast of 100 nuclear weapons, 300 remaining warships of the Velkhari fleet, battered but still dangerous. The Velkhari High Command sent a transmission. Fleet Master Vornax, who had led the failed armada, spoke with desperate pride. They would never surrender. The homeworld was impregnable. Humanity could not win. They should retreat while they still could. Admiral June did not bother responding to Vornax. Instead, he opened a channel directly to the Velkari High Command, the ruling council of the Empire, the 12 beings who had ordered the attack on human explorers, who had enslaved Sora and hundreds of others, who had threatened to burn Earth. President Kyung's face appeared on every screen across the Velkari homeworld. Every citizen, every warrior, every slave could see and hear him. Ambassador Sunhee stood beside him, translating his words into the Velkari language so there could be no misunderstanding. Kyung spoke slowly and clearly. He reviewed the history of this conflict, the unprovoked attack on peaceful explorers, the murder of hundreds of humans, the enslavement of survivors, the threat to destroy Earth, every crime committed by the Velkari Empire. Then he explained what happened next. Humanity had warned them. Return the prisoners, leave human space, or face consequences. The Velkari had chosen to fight. They had sent 5,000 warships to crush humanity. All 5,000 were now debris floating in space. Now humanity stood at the Velkari homeworld. Kyung made an offer, the last one the Empire would receive: unconditional surrender. Return all remaining prisoners, accept responsibility for war crimes, face justice for what they had done. Do this and the Velkari people would live. Refuse and humanity would demonstrate what their weapons could truly do. The Velkari High Command's response was defiant. They would never surrender to primitives. Their defenses were too strong. Humanity was bluffing. Admiral June gave the order. The Stellar Lance activated. The device was mounted on a specially built platform, a massive construct that had taken 3 weeks to assemble. It looked like a mirror kilometers across, made from materials that could withstand temperatures found at the heart of stars. The platform moved into position between the fleet and the system's sun. The Stellar Lance began channeling solar energy. Magnetic fields manipulated the sun's output, focusing its power, concentrating millions of years of fusion into a single beam. The platform glowed, then blazed, then became too bright to look at directly. The beam fired. It was not aimed at the planet. June had given orders that no Velkari civilians would be harmed if it could be avoided. Instead, the Stellar Lance targeted every military installation on and around the homeworld. The planetary shield, designed to stop weapons, could not stop the focused power of a star. The beam punched through it like it was paper. Orbital defense stations vaporized instantly. Weapons platforms melted into slag. Military bases on the surface were burned away, leaving only molten craters. The beam swept across the homeworld's orbit, surgical and precise. Every military target was eliminated. Every warship was destroyed. The entire defensive network that the Velkari had built over centuries was gone in minutes. The civilian population was untouched. Cities remained intact. Farms and factories continued operating. But every weapon, every military asset, every tool of war that the Empire possessed around their homeworld was destroyed. When the Stellar Lance powered down, the Velkari homeworld hung defenseless in space. The human fleet could destroy the planet if they chose. Everyone watching knew this. The Velkari High Command knew this. Kyung spoke again. Humanity had just demonstrated that they could destroy the Velkari homeworld. They chose not to. This was mercy, but it came with conditions. Surrender now completely and unconditionally, or the next shot would not be so precise. The Velkari High Command surrendered. They had no choice. Their military was broken. Their empire was collapsing. Their people watched helplessly as humanity showed power beyond anything they had imagined. Pride and arrogance had led them to this moment, and now they would face the consequences. The trials began 3 months later. Chief Justice Dongwoo presided over the proceedings, held on a neutral station in space where representatives from dozens of species could attend. The Velkari leaders were charged with crimes against sentient beings, unprovoked warfare, enslavement, attempted genocide. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings from Sora's transmission, testimony from rescued prisoners, data logs from destroyed Velkari ships showing the orders they had received. The High Command had started this war deliberately, had chosen to attack humanity without cause, had threatened to kill billions. Dongwoo delivered the sentences. The leaders would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Their empire was dissolved. The subjugated species under Velkari rule were granted independence. Reparations would be paid to all victims of Velkari aggression. The galaxy watched the trials and learned a lesson. Humanity fought not for conquest but for justice. They could have destroyed the Velkari homeworld, could have enslaved them in return, could have built their own empire on the ashes of their enemy. They chose differently. A new galactic council formed, with representatives from all free species. The Velkari's former subjects joined eagerly, grateful to be free. They offered alliances to humanity, wanting protection from any future threats. Counselor Minho proposed what became known as the Terran Doctrine. Humanity would share their defensive technology with allies. They would protect free species from aggression. They would oppose tyranny wherever it appeared. But they would not conquer, would not build an empire, would not become what they had just defeated. The doctrine passed unanimously. Humanity became the protector of the weak, the defender of freedom, not through domination, but through demonstrated strength tempered with restraint. Sora returned to space exploration, given command of a new vessel called Second Horizon. She stood on the bridge looking at the stars, remembering everyone who had died when the Velkari attacked. The ship was armed now, heavily armed, because humanity had learned that peace required the ability to defend it. But the mission was the same as before. Explore, learn, discover, meet new species as friends if possible, as enemies if necessary, but always with the strength to choose which it would be. The Velkari people, freed from their cruel leadership, began to rebuild. Many were ashamed of what their empire had done. Some joined the new Galactic Council, working to prove they could be better than their past. It would take generations, but humanity offered them that chance. Admiral June retired after the war, settling on Mars with his family. A journalist named Jiwoo interviewed him for the historical archives, asking the question everyone wanted answered. How had humanity, peaceful for 2 centuries, become such fearsome warriors so quickly? June's answer was simple and honest. Humanity had never stopped being warriors. They had just stopped fighting each other. All the lessons learned in millennia of warfare, all the tactics and strategies and technologies developed through countless conflicts, all of it had been preserved and studied and improved upon. Humanity became peaceful because they understood war better than anyone else in the galaxy. They knew its cost, its horror, its terrible necessity. They knew that the species that masters warfare most completely is the species that can choose when to use it and when to hold back. The Velkari attacked humanity thinking they were weak because humans had chosen peace. They learned too late that peace was not weakness. Peace was the choice of those strong enough to make it. A memorial was built on Luna, Earth's moon, listing the names of everyone killed in the Velkari attack. 423 names carved into stone that would last for millennia. President Kyung wrote the inscription himself. It read, "They attacked without warning. We responded without mercy. We will never forget. We will always protect." Below the inscription, a second message was added, one meant for any species that might threaten humanity in the future. Simple words that carried the weight of everything that had happened. We chose peace because we understood war. Do not make us remember why. Earth spun in space, peaceful and thriving. Human colonies spread across the stars, exploring and building and creating. The weapons that had won the war were sealed away again, locked in vaults, guarded by strict protocols. Humanity hoped never to use them again, but they kept them ready, just in case, because the galaxy had learned an important truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology or their numbers. It was their memory. They remembered every lesson history had taught them. They remembered the cost of arrogance, the price of weakness, and the necessity of strength in defense of what they loved. The Velkari had chosen the wrong enemy.